Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to start chapter 6, which is going to take us through the basics of the cell and its structure. So first off, let's just kind of take a step back and remember some history of how we came to understand what cells are and the fact that the cells are the most basic unit of living things. And so really this drives back to a major theory of biology, that's our cell theory. So all of these gentlemen here contributed in some way, shape, or form to the three basic principles that make up our cell theory. And that's just that all living things are made of cells, all new cells have come from pre-existing ones, and cells are the smallest unit of structure and function for living things. So the biggest thing that I'm going to ask you to take that next step this year is to really start looking at not just what this organelle does, what that organelle does, but why do cells have those organelles? Because not every cell has every component or has them in the same concentration. And so it really comes down to, why does that cell have tons of mitochondria? Well, because mitochondria are energy producers, which means that cell must need a lot of energy to do its job. Or why does that cell not have a lot of something? So on and so forth. So that's really something that is going to be a driving underlying piece to this. Is at this point in your education, you should be able to know what organelles exist and what their functions are. So now the question becomes, well, based on that information, why do I see a lot of certain organelles in some cell types and not in others? Before we jump into all of that, though, let's just remember that cells, by definition, are microscopic. And the reason for that, why do those cells need to be so small, is that it comes down to the logistics of carrying out cellular metabolism. So everything that that cell requires in terms of nutrients it needs to take in and all of the waste products that it produces that need to get out have to cross the cell membrane, which in this case is its surface area. And the interesting thing is that it's not a direct one-to-one relationship, that as that cell increases its volume, that it increases its surface area by the same percent. In fact, every time we sort of square the surface area, we cube the volume. And so that volume definitely outpaces its growth in comparison to the surface area. And so the bigger the cell is, the more inefficient it becomes in terms of getting things across that cell membrane. Think of it like packing full the cafeteria. And if I could take out an entire wall, how much quicker could we expedite the removal of that volume, right? So opening up that entire wall would be a huge surface area to remove the volume of students packed in the cafeteria. Now, turn it down to smaller and smaller holes in the wall down to the doorway, and you've all experienced the bottleneck that happens getting people out of the cafeteria at the end of lunch. It's kind of the same idea. The more that I decrease the surface area for which things can pass across, in this case the cell membrane, if I increase the volume, that doesn't match the ability for that surface area to handle the traffic going across it, that cell becomes inefficient. And if it becomes so inefficient, it ends up dying. It can't get rid of the waste materials fast enough, and so it ends up building up toxic buildup, nor can it get in the nutrients that it needs fast enough to do its metabolic processes either. Now, that surface area to volume ratio does depend from one cell to the next exactly what that looks like, but generally speaking, cells are microscopic. They are small as a result of needing to maximize that surface area to volume ratio. Again, those cell sizes depend on what the cell's job is. It also depends on its function and what organelles need to be present, if it has any organelles at all. So there's a wide variety of cells. When we look at the largest human cells, they are the human egg cells, and we can actually see that with our naked eye. It looks basically like a dot on your paper. Chicken egg is a cell the length of a lot of nerve cells, although they're thin, can also go really long. We look at generally what we talk about in terms of the capacity for a light microscope, which is what you guys probably think about when you think of cells, are your animal and plant cells, and then down here to your bacteria, which are just on the threshold of what a light microscope can do. And then we get down into things like viruses and macromolecules and atoms, and now we're down onto the electron microscope scale. So all of that range really does depend on what that cell does and what it needs to